Chapter 214 Transient Shadow. 214 Transient Shadow. Did Nephis distrust Castor for some reason? Sonny surely did, and to be entirely honest, he didn't even need any reason to do so. His intuition and general paranoia were enough, but Changing Star was different. He had learned a bitter lesson and now knew that everything she ever did had a firm logic behind it. Even if that logic was entirely different from that of a normal person. So if Nephis was hiding her true battle style from Castor, there was a reason for it. But it didn't make any sense. From everything else that she had done, he was her most trusted lieutenant. Changing Star entrusted more to Castor than she ever had to anyone else. Castor himself also had never acted against Neph's interests. In fact, he was even a bit too loyal. The bastard was always near Nephis, as though glued to her side. He also didn't seem to like it when others got too close to her. In that regard, he was almost like that flying rapier of Cassie's. During their entire day on the Marble Arch, the unfriendly Echo somehow always managed to remain between the blind girl and any men who tried to approach her for whatever reason. The message it was sending was quite clear. I'm watching you. It was honestly rather comical. Sonny shook his head. The dynamic of Changing Star's relationship with Castor was really weird. But once again, he didn't have enough information to make any conclusions. All he could do was keep his eyes open and try to sleep with one of them open when the handsome Legacy was on watch duty. Maybe it was some strange legacy thing? Like guarding the secrets of the clan against the prying eyes of other clans. Who knew? Glancing at the fighting swordsman, Sonny suddenly got an idea. After considering it for a bit, he looked at them again. This time, his eyes were burning. That actually might work. The problem with his technique at the moment was that it lacked true individuality. Sonny knew that there was a secret hiding inside his shadow that could become the foundation of his own unique battle style. He just couldn't understand what that secret was. His progress at deciphering it had stalled. While training, Sonny had trouble keeping his eyes both on the Stone Saint and on the shadow. Whenever he tried, the taciturn knight would inevitably send him into a sea of pain. But even if he managed it somehow, there was an invisible wall standing between him and anything even remotely resembling understanding. He was in a dire need of a breakthrough. So what if his shadows tried to imitate someone else instead of him? And not just someone, but a real sword expert in the middle of a fight? Not only would Sonny be able to observe every tiny detail of its movements, but there would also be something to compare them against. The shadow was a part of him, after all. It was hard to tell where Sonny ended and the shadow began. That's why the difference in how it moved and how he moved was almost imperceptible. But if it followed someone else, he would be able to separate the cadence and pattern of that person's movements from the shadow's by contrasting it against his own. This had to work. Burning with anticipation, Sonny waited for Nephis and Castor to take a short break, and then send the shadow over to the handsome Legacy. Leisurely strolling over the white marble, the shadow approached Castor and brazenly glued itself to his feet. Then, it crossed its arms and glared at the Legacy with almost palpable disdain. Castor stared at the shadow for a couple of seconds, and then raised his head to look at Sonny. There was a very strange expression on his face. What are you doing?" His voice did not sound happy at all. Sonny shrugged with a carefree smile. "Oh, don't mind him. This cretin just lost me an Ascended Soul Shard. As a form of punishment, I've decided to make him your shadow for a bit. So you know. Just do your thing and don't worry about it." The shadow turned its head and pierced him with a menacing look. Sonny could practically hear its thoughts. "Who are you calling a cretin, you cretin?" That had to be it. "Did I guess right, huh?" "Oh, sorry. I forgot you cannot answer." Not paying the offended shadow any more attention, he just smiled wider. Castor frowned, hesitated for a few moments, and then said through gritted teeth, "I would prefer if you wouldn't." Sonny sighed. "Ugh, all right. Whatever." With that, he gave the shadow the command to leave the proud Legacy alone. It separated itself from Castor, pretended to wipe its legs in disgust, and sauntered over to Nephis, only to get attached to her feet with visible delight. It even bowed gallantly to her own shadow and made sure to not get in its way. What is this moron doing? Of course, Sunny had ordered the shadow to approach Neff himself. But he didn't expect it to be so visibly pleased by it. It was as if the shadow was simply beyond itself to finally follow someone competent. You traitor! Nephis looked down on the shadow, smiled, and didn't say anything. Well, good. Now fight! The two legacies did not make him wait long. A few moments later, they were once again locked in a furious battle. Only this time, two shadows were following Nephis. Both of them loyally imitated her movements. However, one of them was slightly, almost imperceptibly, different. Sunny looked at it with an intensity that threatened to burn two holes in the white marble. Soon, his eyes widened. I see it. I think I see it. There, in the tiniest difference between the way Changing Star's own shadow moved and the way his shadow moved, he finally saw it. He had found his breakthrough. Chapter 2:15 Shapeless. Chapter 2:15 Shapeless. Observing the motions of two shadows that followed Nephis, Sunny was finally able to understand the foundation of the elusive shadow style. Before, he only sensed a hint of its essence. He knew that just like the shadow, the hidden battle art was insidious, shapeless, and ever-changing. But this was where lay the problem. A battle style was, by definition, a structured framework of patterns and principles, a doctrine that dictated how one should act to defeat an enemy. That doctrine was used as a foundation and expanded into a variety of specific movements to create a style. But if something didn't have a shape and its form was constantly changing, how could it ever be stable and structured? Sunny had no idea how the concepts he felt were at the core of the shadow style could create something even remotely applicable to practice. Insidious, shapeless, ever-changing. What was he supposed to do with that? But now he understood. The key to it all was so simple and evident that he almost laughed. Why had he not guessed earlier? It was so obvious. The idea that tied everything together was as innate to the nature of shadows as formlessness and elusiveness. It was imitation. After all, what were the first two things that came to mind when one thought about shadows? That they lived in the dark and imitated the things that hid them from light. The foundation of the shadow style was indeed insidious, shapeless, and ever-changing. Its core concept was to steal that which made the enemy strong and use it to destroy them. To master that style, he had to learn how to behave like a shadow. Sunny stared at Nephis and Castor, but didn't see them. His mind was consumed completely by the sudden revelation. He had no time to pay attention to their fight anymore. This style had endless potential. If he managed to master it, he would be able to counter any style or technique used against him, not to mention become an immensely unpredictable opponent. What could be more unpredictable than a formless shadow? Of course, it was easier said than done. To begin with, while the ability to imitate the enemy was incredibly powerful, it also demanded an incredible amount of talent, experience, and insight from the user. You couldn't imitate that which you didn't understand, after all. More importantly, this was just the foundation of the style. He still had to expand it into the actual collection of specific principles, and retrain himself accordingly. That was a mammoth task. Creating a complete style from scratch could take a true battle master years, if not decades. Sunny had not even scratched the surface of this ambitious undertaking. However, this was all right. It was a start. Personal battle arts were not created in an instance, anyway. It was a long and arduous process, with endless iterations coming and going while being tempered by the crucible of combat. It's not like the style would be useless until it became perfect. Sunny just had to get it to the point where it could be applied in battle in one form or another. That alone would tremendously enhance his technique. He smiled, congratulating himself. However, the next moment, a deep scowl appeared on his face. But how, exactly, am I supposed to do that? A while later, When the sun was already touching the western horizon, Sunny was sitting by himself and staring at his shadow. He was motionless like a statue and deep in thought. On his face there was a troubled frown. When someone approached him, Sunny lingered for a few moments and then slowly looked up to see who was disturbing him. To his surprise, it was Nephis. The leader of their cohort stood there for a bit, her graceful figure illuminated by the setting sun. Then she sat down near him. Sunny blinked. Hey Neph. Nephis gave him a nod. Hey Sunny. He waited for a few moments, and then asked, Did you want something? The corner of her mouth slightly curled upward. With a sigh, Changing Star glanced at him and said, It's nothing much. I just wanted to say that I saw you fighting in the catacombs. You have improved a lot in these 3 months. Well done. Sunny smiled. That? Well, it's not like there's a lot of opportunities to lead a peaceful life in the Dark City. I was bound to improve a little, no? She shook her head. Don't sell yourself short. You really did well. Very few would have been able to grow so much and as fast as you. Especially without a teacher. After hesitating for a while, Sunny shrugged. You said it yourself? One real battle is worth more than 1,000 hours of training. There was a lot of battles in those 3 months. Nephis nodded and then asked, That firm and grounded style you weaved into your technique, where did it come from? He scratched the back of his head and, remembering the hellish training sessions with his pet monster, held back the urge to shiver. I just observed how the Stone Saint fought and tried to replicate it. Changing Star smiled. As I thought. I've seen her fight, too. It's a very formidable echo. One of the finest I've ever seen. Coming from a legacy, this meant a lot. Sunny was indeed really lucky to be in the right place at the right time to get the echo of the Stone Saint. If the fallen siblings of the Iron Spiders had not brought her to the brink of death, he would never have been able to survive a battle with the living statue, let alone defeat her. He was even luckier to have a divine aspect that allowed him to turn echoes into creatures that were even more fearsome. All in all, Sunny was extremely fortunate. His fortune was exactly as incredible as his misfortune. He grinned. You know my attributes. I do get lucky a lot. She lingered for a few moments, and then said, I'm glad that you were able to understand the true design of the battle style I taught you. So he was right on this point too. The style Changing Star had given him was indeed designed to be as adaptable as possible, and seamlessly incorporate elements of other styles. It was a perfect foundational battle art, for those talented enough to make use of it, of course, which were, most likely, extremely few and far between. Sunny glanced at Nephis and, after some deliberation, asked, That style of yours is truly unique. Where did it come from? He had been too inexperienced to realize this at the time, but what Neph had taught him could have been considered a rare treasure. The style he took for granted was, in fact, a work of pure genius. It deserved to be famous and ubiquitous, but it was not. Which suggested that this treasure was a secret one. Changing Star lingered for a bit, and then said, It's a part of my inheritance. Sunny blinked and stared at her, stunned. Then why the hell did she teach it to me? Chapter 216 Tacit Understanding. Chapter 216 Tacit Understanding. Sunny stared at Nephis with a complicated expression. After a while he asked, Why did you entrust me with something so precious? She glanced at him, lingered for a few moments, then shrugged. We had a deal, remember? My knowledge in exchange for your share of the spoils we earn. There had indeed existed such a deal. However, he had not exactly acted in good faith when proposing it. After all, he had no use for those spoils, in the first place. Sunny scowled. If Changing Star had really revealed a family secret to him because of a lie, she had a valid reason to be resentful of him, just like he was of her. With a dark smile, he looked away and said, You must have realized by now that I have cheated you in that deal. Nephis turned to him and said, her voice calm and even, You mean the fact that you don't need to absorb soul shard to grow stronger? Sunny froze for a moment, then gave her a nod. You don't seem very surprised. Figures. When Sunny first learned about this ability of his, he was stunned. But Neff seemed to know a lot more than a normal person did. She didn't even try to pretend otherwise. It's a very rare aspect trait, but not unheard of among the upper echelons of the awakened. In fact, I am capable of something like that myself. Although your case does seem to be especially unique. Sunny glanced at her. How so? Changing Star remained silent for a few moments and then said, her voice hinted with a bit of wonder. Usually, when an awakened absorbs the soul essence directly, the process leaves the remnants of the soul core empty. But when you do it, the shards are left brimming with it. This is very unusual. He shifted uncomfortably and then said, Yeah, well, you have your share of secrets too, Neff. Don't think that I didn't notice. Lineage memories, domains. Nephis interrupted him with a heavy gaze. When Sunny fell silent and looked at her with a frown, she said in a strangely somber tone, Never say those words aloud again, Sunny. I am serious. Just knowing them might get you killed. He stared at her for a long time, and then scoffed. No problem. Since you showed me the courtesy of not prying into my secrets, I won't pry into yours. I don't really want to know anyway. The mysterious, upper echelons you mentioned can play their dirty little games all they want, as long as they leave me out of them. Then, Sunny frowned and added, But there is one question I have to ask you, because it involves me personally. She raised an eyebrow. Sure. Ask away. He grimaced. Why are you hiding the true core of your technique from Castor? Changing Star looked at him for a bit, and then smiled. So you've noticed. That's good, too. Yes. I've been using a different style when facing Castor. Sunny looked at her with a humorless expression. Why? She shrugged. Why did you incorporate elements of the Stone Saint's technique into your own? He shook his head. To become stronger. Also, nice try at misdirection, but I won't fall for your tricks. I'm the one who taught them to you, remember? So just stop. Answer my question. Nephis sighed and turned away, glancing at the silhouette of the crimson spire that loomed in the distance. After a while, she said, I'll answer you when we return to the Dark City. It won't change anything until then anyway. Your safety won't be compromised in any way. What is that supposed to mean? As he glared at her, Changing Star stood up and turned to leave. Before that, however, she lingered for a moment and said, Keep sharpening your sword, Sunny. I expect big things from you. With that, she walked away, leaving him speechless. And what does she mean by that? After Nephis left, Sunny returned to staring at his shadow. However, despite the fact that he had figured out the essence and foundation of the elusive battle art that hid inside it, he had no idea how to go about creating an actual style out of them. He did not have enough experience and mastery to be able to create something out of nothing. It was a dead end. Curses! Why even hide that damn mystery inside the aspect if I can't do anything with it? Perhaps in the distant future, he would be able to. But right now, it was as though he had found the door, but was not strong enough to turn the key and unlock it. It just stood there and teased him endlessly, just like the damn gateway inside the Crimson Spire. It was pure torture. Maybe I wasn't supposed to notice the existence of the hidden style so soon, but he did. And he worked so hard to gain insight into its secrets. Was it all for nothing? All the pain, all the effort? Why would spell do this to him? Do you have to ask? That's the damn spell we're talking about. Why wouldn't it do something like this to you? With a bitter sigh, Sunny turned away and tried to forget all about the shadow, techniques, and battle styles. It was almost dark, anyway. Time to sleep. Walking over to the center of the marble arch, Sunny lay down beside the other members of the cohort and tiredly closed his eyes. The beach vacation was over. It was funny, visually stunning, and unexpectedly emotional, but ended on a bitter note. Tomorrow was going to be another long day. To hell with this. Exhausted by all of it, he fell asleep before even finishing the thought. This crap. Sonny opened his eyes and looked around in confusion. The world was enveloped in a strange, dim twilight. Deep shadows surrounded him, shrouding the tall walls that were cut from black marble. Looking between the mighty columns, Sonny saw the black circle of the sun burning in the lightless sky. An eclipse? No, wait, what walls? What columns? Wasn't he supposed to be sleeping at the top of the White Arch? What was happening? Suddenly, a woman's scream tore the silence like a sharp knife. It was full of pain and suffering. Sonny tried to summon the midnight shard into his hand, only to realize that he had no hands. Then, something else resounded from the darkness. A baby's cry. What the? Almost at the same time, Sonny realized something terrible. This was a dream. He was dreaming. People were not supposed to dream in the dream realm. Not good.